The afternoon sun was starting to dip behind the tall buildings when little Sophie sat down on the cold metal bench. She was only 7 years old, but she had learned to be patient. Her backpack, faded and patched in 2 places, rested beside her small frame. Inside it were 3 homework sheets she had already finished, a library book about butterflies and 1 chocolate chip cookie wrapped carefully in a paper napkin. This bench had become her second home. It sat right outside St. Mary's Community Hospital, under a flickering streetlight that buzzed when the evening came. Sophie knew that sound by heart now. She had been coming here almost every day for the past year, ever since her mom started working the evening shift as a hospital cleaner. The hospital doors kept opening and closing. Doctors walked out looking tired. Nurses chatted as they left for the day. Families came and went, some smiling, others crying. Sophie watched them all. She had become good at reading faces, understanding without words whether someone had received good news or bad news from inside those glass doors. Today felt different, though. There was a chill in the October air that made Sophie pull her thin jacket tighter. The jacket was too small, really, the sleeves ending well above her wrists, but it was all she had. Her mom kept saying they would get her a new one soon, maybe next month when the paycheck came. Sophie never complained. She had learned not to ask for things. She reached into her backpack and pulled out the cookie. Her mom had bought it yesterday from the discount bakery on 5th Street, the one that sold day-old items for half price. It was Sophie's favorite treat, something she looked forward to all week. She held it gently, feeling its weight through the napkin. The chocolate chips had melted a little and then hardened again, making bumpy patterns on the surface. Sophie was about to take her first bite when she heard it, a sound that made her stop. It was quiet at first, barely noticeable over the traffic noise and the hospital sounds. But Sophie's ears were sharp. She turned her head toward the other end of the bench. A man sat there. Sophie hadn't even noticed when he arrived. He was wearing a suit, the kind of fancy suit she had only seen on television or in magazine pictures at the grocery store. It was dark blue, perfectly pressed, with shiny buttons. His shoes looked like mirrors reflecting the dying sunlight. Everything about him screamed expensive, successful, important. But none of that mattered right now because the man was crying. He wasn't crying loudly. There were no sobs or wails. Instead, his face was buried in his hands and his shoulders moved up and down in a rhythm that Sophie recognized. She had seen her mother cry like that, late at night when she thought Sophie was asleep. Quiet crying, the kind that comes from somewhere deep inside, the kind that hurts too much for loud sounds. Sophie's cookie suddenly felt heavier in her hands. She looked at it, then back at the man. Her stomach growled softly. She had only eaten half a sandwich for lunch, saving the other half for dinner. The cookie was supposed to be her treat, her one sweet thing for the week. The man's phone kept lighting up on the bench beside him. It buzzed and rang over and over. Sophie could see the screen flashing even from where she sat. But the man didn't move. He didn't even seem to hear it. Whatever messages were coming through, whatever calls he was missing, none of it mattered to him in this moment. Sophie had learned about sadness early in her life. 2 years ago, her father had died. She remembered very little about the actual day, but she remembered the feeling. She remembered how the whole world seemed to go gray, how food lost its taste, how nothing felt right anymore. She remembered her mother trying to be strong, forcing smiles that didn't reach her eyes, working longer hours to pay bills that kept piling up. Looking at this stranger now, Sophie recognized that same kind of pain, the kind that makes everything else disappear. The kind that makes fancy suits and shiny shoes and buzzing phones mean absolutely nothing. She made a decision. Standing up, Sophie brushed off her worn jeans and walked slowly toward the other end of the bench. Her sneakers, too small and held together with tape at one corner, made soft sounds against the concrete. As she got closer, she could see more details. The man's hands were shaking. His perfectly styled hair was messed up, like he had been running his fingers through it. There was a wedding ring on his finger, gold and thick. Sophie stopped right in front of him. For a moment, she just stood there, uncertain. Her mother had always told her not to talk to strangers. But her mother had also taught her something else, something more important. She had taught her that kindness matters, especially when someone is hurting. "Mister?" Sophie's voice was small but clear. The man didn't respond. He didn't even seem to hear her. Sophie tried again, a little louder this time. "Mister, excuse me." Still nothing. She reached out and gently tapped his arm. The fabric of his suit felt smooth and expensive under her small fingers, so different from her own rough cotton jacket. This time, the man's hands slowly lowered from his face. He looked up and Sophie found herself staring into eyes that were red and swollen from crying. He seemed confused, like he wasn't quite sure where he was or how he had gotten there. For a long moment, he just stared at Sophie without really seeing her. Then his eyes focused. He blinked a few times, looking down at this small girl with tangled brown hair and a jacket that didn't fit. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice rough and broken. I'm sorry, did you need something?" Sophie shook her head. "No, mister, but you look really sad." The man's face did something complicated. His jaw tightened, and for a second, Sophie thought he might start crying again. Instead, he looked away toward the hospital entrance. "I am sad," he said quietly. "Very sad." Sophie nodded like she understood. Then she held out the cookie, still wrapped in its napkin. "This always makes me feel better when I'm sad," she said. "You can have it." The man looked at the offering in her small, outstretched hand. His eyebrows pulled together in confusion. That's your cookie?" "Yes, sir. I can't take your cookie. It's okay. I want you to have it." The man looked from the cookie to Sophie's face, then back to the cookie again. "Don't you want it?" "You should keep it." Sophie's stomach growled again, quietly. She did want it. She wanted it very much. But something in her heart told her this was more important. "I only have one," she explained, her voice matter-of-fact. "But my mama always says that sharing makes everything better. She says when you give something to someone who needs it, it's like magic. It helps them, but it also helps you feel good inside too." The man stared at her for what felt like a long time. His eyes were filling with tears again, but different tears this time. He reached out slowly and took the cookie from her hand. His fingers were trembling. "Thank you," he whispered. "You have no idea." "Thank you?" Sophie smiled, the kind of pure, honest smile that only children can manage. "You're welcome, mister. I hope you feel better soon." She started to turn away, ready to go back to her spot on the bench, but the man spoke again. "Wait, please. What's your name?" Sophie Rodriguez and Sophie." He repeated it like he was memorizing it. "I'm Mr. Chen, James Chen." "It's nice to meet you, Mr. Chen." "Sophie, can I ask you something?" "Why are you here?" "At the hospital? Are you waiting for someone?" Sophie nodded. "My mama works inside. She cleans the floors and the rooms. I wait here until she's done. Then we take the bus home together. She works until 8 o'clock most nights." James looked at her carefully, taking in her small frame, her ill-fitting clothes, her worn-out shoes. "You wait here every day?" "Almost every day. Sometimes it's cold, but it's okay. I bring my homework and my library books, and the streetlight up there gives me light when it gets dark." Something in James's expression shifted. He unwrapped the cookie slowly and broke it in half. "Will you sit with me?" "Just for a minute. We can share this." Sophie hesitated. She glanced back at her regular spot on the bench, then at this sad man with the expensive suit and kind eyes. "Okay, but just for a little bit." They sat together on that bench as the sun continued to set. James carefully gave Sophie the slightly larger half of the cookie. They ate in silence for a moment, and Sophie noticed that Mr. Chen was crying again, but softer now, quieter. "This is a really good cookie," he said finally. "The bakery on 5th Street makes them. We can only afford the day-old ones, but they still taste really good." James nodded slowly. He looked at Sophie with an expression she couldn't quite read. "Can I tell you something, Sophie? Something that might seem strange?" "Okay. I came here today from the 6th floor. That's where the intensive care unit is. Do you know what that is?" Sophie shook her head. "It's where they keep people who are very, very sick. My daughter is up there. Her name is Lily. She's 15 years old and she was in a car accident a week ago. The doctors don't know if she's going to wake up." Sophie's eyes went wide. "I'm sorry, Mr. Chen, that's really scary." "It is scary. It's the scariest thing that's ever happened to me. I have a lot of money, Sophie. I own a big company. I can buy almost anything I want. But I can't fix this. I can't make my daughter better. And that makes me feel so helpless." Sophie thought about this for a moment. "My daddy died 2 years ago," she said quietly. "He got really sick and we couldn't afford the medicine he needed. Mama tried everything, but we just didn't have enough money. I know it's not the same, but I know what it feels like to be scared like that." James looked at this little girl with wonder and heartbreak mixed together on his face. Here was a child who had lost her father because they couldn't afford treatment, offering comfort to a man who could afford anything but couldn't buy what he needed most. "I'm so sorry about your father," James said. "Thank you. I still miss him a lot, but Mama says he's watching over us now. She says the people we love never really leave us, they just change into a different kind of present, like they become part of our hearts instead of being next to us. Your Mama sounds very wise." "She is. She works really hard and she's tired a lot, but she always tells me that we have to keep being kind to people even when life is hard. Especially when life is hard," she says. They sat quietly for another moment. James's phone was still buzzing, but he continued to ignore it. Instead, he looked at this remarkable child beside him, this little girl who had so little but gave so freely. "You know what, Sophie?" he said. "I think you and your Mama are right. I think kindness matters more than anything else. More than money, more than success, more than any of the things I thought were important. You've reminded me of something I had forgotten." "What's that?" "That miracles don't come from having everything. They come from moments like this. From people like you who see someone hurting and decide to help, even when it costs them something." Sophie smiled again. "Miracles don't care if you're rich or not," she said, repeating something her mother had told her many times. "They just happen when they're supposed to happen. Maybe your daughter will get her miracle soon." James reached over and gently squeezed Sophie's small hand. "Maybe she will. And maybe I just got mine sitting here on this bench with you." In the distance, a bus pulled up to the stop down the street. Sophie stood up quickly. "That's my bus. Mama will be out soon and we have to catch it or we'll have to wait another hour." "Of course. Go on." Sophie picked up her backpack and started to run, then stopped and turned back. "Mr. Chen, I'll say a prayer for your daughter tonight. For Lily." James's voice caught in his throat. "Thank you, Sophie. That means more than you know." As Sophie ran toward the bus stop, James watched her go. He looked down at the half-eaten cookie in his hand, this simple treat that had come to mean so much. He wrapped the remaining piece carefully in the napkin, as if it were something precious and valuable, which in a way it was. The hospital doors opened again, and James knew he should go back inside to his daughter's room. But for the first time in days, he felt something other than despair. He felt hope. Not because anything had changed medically, but because a 7-year-old girl in worn-out shoes had reminded him that even in the darkest moments, light can break through. He stood up, straightened his expensive suit, and walked back toward the hospital entrance with different shoulders, a different posture. He was still a father facing the worst nightmare of his life, but he was also a man who had been touched by unexpected grace, by the kind of pure kindness that changes everything. As he reached the door, James turned back one more time. In the distance, he could see Sophie climbing onto the bus with a woman who must be her mother. Even from far away, he could see how the woman's arm went around her daughter's shoulders, pulling her close. Two people who had every reason to be bitter about their circumstances, choosing instead to live with open hearts and generous spirits. James made a mental note of everything. The hospital, the evening shift, the bus route, Sophie Rodriguez. He would remember. He would find a way to thank this child properly, to honor the gift she had given him when he needed it most. But for now, he had a daughter to sit with. And for the first time since the accident, he felt ready to face her room with something other than helpless despair. He felt ready to believe in miracles again, the kind that come wrapped in paper napkins and offered by small hands to sad strangers on hospital benches. James stood in the elevator, watching the numbers climb. 3rd floor, 4th floor, 5th floor. Each beep felt like it took forever. His hand was still in his pocket, touching the napkin with the remaining piece of cookie. He hadn't let go of it since Sophie ran to catch her bus. The elevator doors opened on the 6th floor, and the familiar smell hit him immediately. Hospitals had a specific scent, a mixture of cleaning supplies and something else he could never quite name. Fear, maybe. Hope. Desperation. All mixed together in the recycled air. He walked down the corridor, his expensive shoes making soft sounds on the polished floor. Nurses looked up and nodded at him. They all knew him by now. He had been here every single day since the accident, sometimes sleeping in the uncomfortable chair beside his daughter's bed, sometimes pacing these hallways at 3 a.m. when sleep wouldn't come. Room 624. His daughter's room. He paused at the door, his hand on the handle, preparing himself like he did every time. Then he pushed it open and stepped inside. Lily lay exactly as she had been that morning, exactly as she had been yesterday, exactly as she had been for 7 days now. Tubes and wires connected her to machines that beeped and hummed, doing the living for her while her body tried to heal from injuries that seemed impossible to survive. She was 15 years old. Just 15. She should have been worrying about algebra tests and which friends to sit with at lunch. Instead, she was here, trapped somewhere between life and death while machines breathed for her and monitors tracked her heartbeat. James pulled the chair closer to her bed and sat down heavily. He took her hand, careful not to disturb the IV line taped to her skin. Her hand was warm at least. That was something. The doctors kept telling him that warm hands were a good sign that her body was still fighting. "Hey, baby girl," he whispered. "Dad's back. I know I said I was just stepping out for air, but I ended up sitting outside for longer than I planned." The machines continued their steady rhythm. Beep, hum, beep, hum. Something happened out there. "Lily, something I need to tell you about." James reached into his pocket and carefully pulled out the napkin with the cookie piece. "I met someone, a little girl maybe 7 years old. She was sitting on a bench outside and she gave me this." He unwrapped the napkin slowly, looking at the half cookie like it held secrets. "I know what you're thinking. Why is Dad talking about cookies when you're lying here fighting for your life? But it's not really about the cookie, sweetheart. It's about what it means." James felt his throat tightening. This little girl, Sophie, she probably hasn't had an easy day in her entire life. Her father died 2 years ago. Her mother works as a cleaner here, and Sophie waits outside every evening until her shift ends. In weather like this, with that cold wind and her jacket that's too small, James paused, remembering Sophie's thin frame, her worn-out shoes held together with tape. She had one cookie, Lily, one single cookie that her mother bought from a discount bakery. That was probably her treat for the whole week. And when she saw me crying on that bench, she didn't walk away. She didn't ignore me like everyone else did. She came over and gave me her cookie. The only one she had. A tear rolled down James's cheek. He didn't bother wiping it away. I've been sitting here for days feeling sorry for myself, feeling angry at the world, at the universe, at God, or whoever's supposed to be in charge up there. I kept thinking, why us? Why you? We have everything. We've worked hard, we've been good people, we donate to charity. Why would this happen to us? He squeezed Lily's hand gently. But that little girl out there, she's lost her father. She goes hungry sometimes. She waits in the cold while her mother scrubs floors to keep a roof over their heads. And somehow, with all of that, she still has enough heart to give away her only cookie to a sad stranger. How does that happen, Lily? How does someone who has nothing find it in themselves to give what little they have? The machines kept beeping. The monitors kept tracking. But something in the room felt different. Or maybe something in James felt different. Your mother called again while I was outside, James continued, his voice steadier now. She's been calling every hour. I know I should answer, but I don't know what to say to her anymore. She's at home falling apart, and I'm here falling apart, and you're... His voice broke. You're here fighting a battle we can't fight for you. He sat back in the chair, still holding Lily's hand, still looking at her peaceful face. She was so beautiful, even with all the tubes and bandages. She had her mother's eyes, closed now, but he knew them by heart. Brown with little flecks of gold. Eyes that had always been able to make him laugh even on his worst days. The board has been calling too, James said, his voice taking on a harder edge. The merger is supposed to close next week. Millions of dollars on the line. Hundreds of jobs depending on this deal going through. And they need me to sign papers, make decisions, show up for meetings. My assistant has called 17 times today. 17. James looked at his phone, lying dark and silent on the small table beside Lily's bed. He had finally turned it off an hour ago, unable to handle one more message about quarterly reports or shareholder expectations. I built that company from nothing, 20 years of my life poured into it. There was a time when that company was everything to me, when I measured my worth by profit margins and stock prices, when I thought success meant having the biggest office and the most expensive car. He laughed, but it was a bitter sound. And now look at me. I'd burn that whole company to the ground if it meant you'd open your eyes. I'd give away every penny, every asset, every single thing I own just to hear you say Dad one more time. His voice dropped to barely a whisper. But money doesn't work that way, does it? It can't buy the things that actually matter. That little girl outside taught me that with one simple gesture. James stood up and walked to the window. The sun had fully set now, and the city lights were beginning to twinkle in the darkness. Somewhere down there, Sophie and her mother were probably on that bus, heading home to whatever small apartment they could afford. They'd eat a simple dinner, maybe do homework at a kitchen table, maybe say prayers before bed, and they'd be grateful. Despite everything they lacked, they'd find reasons to be thankful. Dr. Martinez came by earlier, James said, turning back to face his daughter. She said there's no change, but that no change isn't necessarily bad news. She said your brain is healing, that these things take time. She used a lot of medical terms that I'm supposed to understand because I went to fancy schools and run a technology company. But honestly, Lily, I didn't understand any of it. All I heard was maybe and possibly, and we'll have to wait and see. He sat back down, suddenly exhausted. I'm tired of waiting. I'm tired of seeing. I want to do something. I want to fix this. That's what I do, isn't it? I fix things. Someone presents a problem and I find a solution. That's how I built the company. That's how I've lived my whole life. But I can't fix this, and it's killing me. The door opened softly and a nurse came in. She was young, probably in her late 20s, with kind eyes and a gentle manner. James had seen her before. Her name tag said Rachel. Mr. Chen, she said quietly. I'm just here to check Lily's vitals and adjust her IV. I'll only be a minute. James nodded and moved aside to give her room. He watched as Rachel worked efficiently, checking machines, making notes on her tablet, adjusting tubes with practiced hands. She handled his daughter with such care, such gentleness, as if Lily could feel every touch. How is she? James asked, even though he knew Rachel couldn't tell him anything the doctors hadn't already said. Rachel smiled softly. Her numbers are stable, Mr. Chen. That's what we want to see. Her body is resting and healing. But when will she wake up? Rachel's smile turned sympathetic. I wish I could tell you. Every patient is different. Some wake up quickly, others take longer. But the important thing is that she's fighting. Her body knows what to do. After Rachel left, James felt more alone than ever. The room was too quiet except for the machines, too still except for the rise and fall of Lily's chest as the ventilator did its work. He thought about Sophie again, about her small hand holding out that cookie, about her simple words. Miracles don't care if you're rich or not. They just happen when they're supposed to happen. Could he believe that? Could he really believe that miracles existed? That they happened randomly to rich and poor alike? Or was that just something people told themselves to feel better about the unfairness of life? James pulled out his phone and turned it back on. Immediately, it started buzzing with notifications. Messages from his assistant, his board members, his business partners. Everyone wanting something, needing something, demanding his attention for things that suddenly seemed incredibly unimportant. But he scrolled past all of them until he found what he was looking for, his wife's messages. There were dozens of them sent throughout the day. Any change? Please call me. James, I need to hear your voice. I can't do this alone. Please come home tonight. The doctor called me. Why won't you answer your phone? I love you. I love Lily. We'll get through this. James felt guilt wash over him. His wife, Catherine, had been holding down the fort at home, taking care of their two younger children while falling apart inside. And he had been avoiding her calls because he didn't know how to tell her that nothing had changed, that their daughter was still lost somewhere inside her own mind. He typed out a message. I'm sorry. I'm here with her. She's stable. I'll call you soon. I love you. The response came back almost immediately. I need you to come home tonight, just for a few hours, please. The kids need to see you. I need to see you. James looked at Lily's peaceful face. Could he leave her? Even for a few hours? What if something changed? What if she woke up and he wasn't there, but Catherine was right? They had two other children at home, 10-year-old Michael and 8-year-old Grace. They were terrified, confused, and desperately needing their father. He couldn't forget about them just because Lily needed him too. Okay, he typed back. I'll come home for dinner. Be there in an hour. He stood up and leaned over Lily's bed, kissing her forehead gently. "I have to go home for a little while, sweetheart. Your mom and siblings need me. But I'll be back first thing tomorrow morning. And I'm going to keep believing what that little girl told me. I'm going to believe in miracles." As James left the hospital, walking through the same doors he had entered earlier, he looked toward the bench where Sophie had been sitting. It was empty now, just a cold piece of metal under the flickering streetlight. But something had happened there, something important. James got into his car, a luxury sedan that cost more than most people made in a year. He started the engine and pulled out of the parking lot, but instead of heading straight home, he found himself driving in a different direction. He drove through neighborhoods he never usually visited, areas where the houses were smaller, where apartment buildings had peeling paint and chain-link fences. He saw children playing in small yards, their laughter carrying through the evening air despite the cold. He saw families sitting on porches, mothers calling their kids inside for dinner. This was Sophie's world. This was where she and her mother lived, somewhere in these streets. They had so little compared to what he had. No fancy house in the suburbs, no three-car garage, no swimming pool or home theater. But did they have something he had lost along the way? That sense of community? That ability to find joy in simple things? That generous spirit that could give away a cookie without hesitation? James finally turned the car toward home, but his mind was still on that bench, on that little girl, on that cookie. He thought about how Sophie would probably go to sleep tonight in a small bed, maybe sharing a room with her mother, maybe wearing clothes that didn't quite fit. She might go to sleep a little hungry because she had given away her snack, but she would probably sleep peacefully. Because she had done something good. Because she had helped someone who was hurting. And somehow, in her 7-year-old wisdom, she understood that giving made you richer, not poorer. When James pulled into his driveway, he sat in the car for a moment before going inside. The house was enormous, with perfectly manicured lawns and designer landscaping. Every window glowed with warm light. It looked like a picture from a magazine. Perfect. Beautiful. Empty. He looked down at the napkin still in his hand, at the remaining piece of cookie that he had somehow carried with him all this time, and he made a decision right there in his driveway, sitting in his expensive car outside his expensive house. This wouldn't be the end of the story. Sophie had given him a gift, and somehow, some way, he was going to find a way to honor that gift. Not by throwing money at her family, though he could do that easily enough, but by learning from her, by becoming the kind of person who could give generously even when it cost something. By remembering that success wasn't measured in bank accounts or business deals but in moments of human connection, in cookies shared with strangers, in kindness offered freely, in miracles that happened when they were supposed to happen, regardless of who you were or what you had. James got out of the car and walked toward his front door, where his wife and children were waiting. He was still a father with a daughter fighting for her life. He was still a man facing the worst crisis he had ever known. But he was also something else now. He was a man who had been reminded of what truly mattered. And that changed everything. 3 days had passed since James met Sophie on that bench. 3 days that felt like 3 years, but something had shifted inside him, something he couldn't quite explain to anyone, not even to his wife Catherine when she asked why he seemed different. "You're calmer," she had said that morning over coffee. Still worried, still scared, but calmer somehow. What changed? James had tried to explain about the little girl and the cookie, but the words came out wrong. It sounded silly when he said it out loud. A child gave him a cookie, and now he felt hope. It made no logical sense. But logic had nothing to do with what he was feeling. Now he sat beside Lily's bed again, holding her hand like he did every day. The machines still beeped their steady rhythm. The monitors still tracked her vitals. Everything looked exactly the same as it had for the past 10 days. Except it wasn't the same. Not really. "The doctors say your brain activity is improving," James told his daughter, his thumb gently rubbing circles on the back of her hand. "They're talking about reducing your sedation in the next day or two. They think you might be ready to start waking up on your own." He paused, listening to the ventilator breathe for her. "I don't know if you can hear me in there, baby girl. The doctors say maybe you can, maybe you can't, but I'm going to keep talking anyway. Because I need you to know something important. I need you to know that I'm not the same person I was before this happened. James shifted in his chair, leaning closer. For your whole life, I've been chasing something. Success, I guess. Money. Recognition. I wanted to prove that I could build something from nothing, that I could be somebody important. And I did that. I built a company worth millions. I got the respect, the reputation, all of it. But you know what? In the process, I missed things. I missed your soccer games sometimes. I missed bedtime stories. I missed dance recitals and parent-teacher conferences because I was in meetings or on business trips. His voice cracked slightly. I told myself I was doing it for you kids, for our family. I was building security, building a future. But really, if I'm honest, I was doing it for me, for my ego. And it took almost losing you to realize that none of it matters. Not one single bit of it matters if I don't have you. The door opened and Dr. Martinez walked in. She was a small woman with gray streaks in her dark hair and eyes that had seen too much suffering to ever look completely happy. But she was kind and she was honest, and James had grown to trust her over these impossible days. Mr. Chen, she said, nodding to him. I have good news. James's heart jumped. She's awake? Not yet, but we're seeing very encouraging signs. Her brain scans show significant improvement. The swelling has gone down considerably, and her responses to stimuli are getting stronger. We're going to start weaning her off the sedation this afternoon. What does that mean? When will she wake up? Dr. Martinez sat down in the chair across from him. Every patient is different. Some wake up within hours of stopping sedation. Others take days. But based on what we're seeing, I'm optimistic that Lily will start showing signs of consciousness within the next 24 to 48 hours. James felt tears spring to his eyes. Really? You really think so? I do. Her body has been healing well. She's young and strong. I think she's ready to start coming back to us. After Dr. Martinez left, James sat in stunned silence. Hope. Real, concrete hope. Not just the desperate kind he had been clinging to, but actual medical hope based on tests and scans and professional opinion. He pulled out his phone and called Catherine. She answered on the first ring. James? They're reducing her sedation today. Dr. Martinez thinks she might wake up soon. Maybe within the next 2 days. He heard Catherine's breath catch, heard her trying not to cry. Oh my God, really? Really? She's getting better, Kath. Our girl is fighting her way back. They talked for a few more minutes, Catherine's voice breaking with relief and joy and fear all mixed together. When they hung up, James felt lighter than he had in days. He looked at his daughter's face, searching for any sign of change, any flicker of movement. You hear that, Lily? You're coming back to us. I knew you would. I knew you were strong enough. He stayed with her for another hour, just holding her hand and talking to her about nothing and everything. He told her about her brother and sister at home, how Michael had been sleeping with her favorite stuffed animal and Grace had been drawing pictures to hang in her hospital room. He told her about the homework she was missing and how her best friend Taylor had been texting him every day asking for updates. And he told her about Sophie. I can't stop thinking about that little girl. James admitted, about what she did and what it meant. I've been sitting here trying to figure out how to find her again. I know she waits outside this hospital almost every day while her mother works. I know her mother's name is Rosa Rodriguez and she works the evening cleaning shift. But I don't want to just show up and throw money at them. That's not what this is about. He stood up and walked to the window, looking down at the street below. It was early afternoon, too early for Sophie to be there yet. But he found himself looking for her anyway. When you wake up, I want you to meet her. I want you to know the person who gave me hope when I had none left. Who reminded me what really matters in this world. James spent the rest of the afternoon with Lily, watching as nurses came in and began the process of reducing her sedation. They explained that it would be gradual, that they'd watch her carefully, that there was nothing for him to do but wait and see. So he waited. And he watched, and he prayed in a way he hadn't prayed since he was a child. Evening came slowly. Through the window, James could see the sun starting to set, and suddenly he knew what he needed to do. I'll be back in a little while, sweetheart, he told Lily, kissing her forehead. There's something I need to do. He took the elevator down to the ground floor and walked outside. The cold October air hit him immediately, but he barely noticed. His eyes went straight to the bench, and there she was. Sophie sat in her usual spot, her backpack beside her, a book open on her lap. She was wearing the same too-small jacket, the same worn-out shoes. Her legs swung back and forth, not quite reaching the ground. James walked over slowly, not wanting to startle her. As he got closer, he could see she was reading a book about ocean animals. Her lips moved slightly as she read, her finger following along under the words. "Hi, Sophie," he said gently. She looked up and her face broke into a huge smile. "Mr. Chen! You came back." "I did. Do you mind if I sit with you?" "No, it's okay. How's your daughter? Is she better?" James sat down beside her, his expensive suit looking out of place on the hospital bench. "She's getting better. The doctors think she's going to wake up soon." Sophie's eyes went wide with joy. "Really? That's so good. I've been praying for her every night before bed, just like I said I would." Something in James's chest squeezed tight. "You have?" "Yes, sir. I pray for lots of people. I pray for my mama, and for my teacher, Mrs. Wilson, and for my friend Danny, who has asthma like me, and now I pray for Lily, too." "That's your daughter's name, right?" "That's right, Lily." James couldn't believe this child had remembered his daughter's name, had been praying for a stranger every night. "Thank you, Sophie. That means more to me than you could possibly know." They sat quietly for a moment. Sophie closed her book and put it back in her backpack. "Sophie, can I ask you something?" "Sure. Why did you give me that cookie?" "You didn't know me. You didn't owe me anything. You could have just ignored me like everyone else did." Sophie thought about this seriously, her small face scrunching up in concentration. "Well, my daddy used to say that we're all connected, like a big invisible web, and when one person hurts, it makes the whole web shake a little bit. So when we help someone who's hurting, we're really helping fix the whole web, not just that one person." James stared at this 7-year-old child who spoke with the wisdom of someone much older. "Your daddy sounds like he was a very smart man." "He was. I miss him a lot. But Mama says he's still teaching me things even though he's not here anymore. She says the lessons he taught me are like seeds he planted in my heart, and they keep growing even now." "Your mama's right." Sophie tilted her head, looking at James with curious eyes. "Mr. Chen, can I ask you something?" "Of course. Are you still sad?" James thought about it. "Yes," he said honestly. "I'm still sad and scared, but I'm also hopeful now, partly because of you. You reminded me that good things can happen even when everything seems dark." Sophie nodded like this made perfect sense. "That's what Mama always says. She says nighttime always ends. Morning always comes. Even when you're in the darkest dark, the sun is still there, just waiting on the other side of the earth to come back around." "How did you get so wise, Sophie Rodriguez?" She giggled. "I'm not wise. I'm just 7. But I pay attention. Mama says people who pay attention learn the most important things." The hospital doors opened and a woman in a cleaning uniform came out. She looked tired, with dark circles under her eyes and her hair pulled back in a practical ponytail, but her face lit up when she saw Sophie. "Mia," she called out. Sophie jumped up. "That's my mama." "Mama, come meet Mr. Chen." Rosa Rodriguez walked over and James stood up to greet her. She looked confused, her eyes going from her daughter to this well-dressed man standing at their bench. "Mrs. Rodriguez," James said, extending his hand. "I'm James Chen. Your daughter did something very kind for me a few days ago, and I wanted to thank her properly." Rosa shook his hand hesitantly. "Sophie, what did you do?" "I just gave him my cookie, Mama. He was really sad." Rosa's eyes widened. "Sophie, you gave away your cookie? That was your treat for the whole week." "I know, but he needed it more than me." Rosa looked at James, her expression hard to read. Pride and embarrassment seemed to fight for control of her features. "I'm sorry if she bothered you, Mr. Chen. Sophie has a big heart, but sometimes she doesn't understand that not everyone wants—" "Please," James interrupted gently. "Don't apologize. Your daughter gave me exactly what I needed at exactly the right moment. She's an extraordinary child, Mrs. Rodriguez. You should be very proud." Rosa's defensive posture softened slightly. "I am proud, every single day." She put her hand on Sophie's shoulder. "But we should go. Our bus will be here soon." "Mrs. Rodriguez, wait. Please. Could I talk to you for just a moment? Sophie, too?" Rosa hesitated, clearly unsure about this situation, but something in James's face must have convinced her because she nodded slowly. "My daughter is upstairs in the ICU," James began. She was in a terrible accident. I've been sitting by her bed for days, feeling completely helpless. A few days ago, I came outside to get some air, and I was falling apart. Your daughter saw me, and instead of ignoring me or being scared, she gave me her cookie. Just like that. No hesitation. Rosa's eyes filled with tears as she looked down at Sophie. That simple act of kindness changed something in me, James continued. It reminded me that even in our darkest moments, there's still light in the world. There are still good people doing good things. And today, I got news that my daughter is getting better. She's going to wake up soon. That's wonderful, Rosa said softly. It is. And I believe part of that miracle started right here, on this bench, when your daughter chose kindness over keeping something for herself. Sophie looked up at her mother. See, Mama. I told you miracles don't care if you're rich or not. Rosa laughed through her tears and hugged her daughter close. Yes, mija. You told me. James watched them, this mother and daughter who had so little but gave so freely. He thought about his own family, about the lessons he wanted to teach his children. Had he been teaching them the right things? Had he shown them that success without compassion meant nothing? That wealth without generosity was just empty numbers in a bank account? Mrs. Rodriguez, James said carefully. I know we just met, and this might seem strange, but would you and Sophie consider having dinner with my family sometime, after my daughter wakes up and recovers a bit? I'd like my children to meet Sophie. I think they could learn something important from her. Rosa looked surprised. I don't know, Mr. Chen. That's very kind, but please. It would mean a lot to me, to all of us. Rosa glanced down at Sophie, who was nodding enthusiastically. Can we, Mama? Please? We'll see, mija, we'll see. Rosa looked back at James. We really do need to catch our bus now. Of course. But here, James pulled out a business card and a pen. He wrote his personal cell phone number on the back. My number is on here, please call me anytime. Even if it's just to talk or if you or Sophie need anything at all. Rosa took the card slowly, looking at it like it might burn her fingers. Thank you, Mr. Chen. That's very generous. It's not generosity. It's gratitude. As James watched Sophie and Rosa walk toward the bus stop, Sophie turned back and waved enthusiastically. He waved back, feeling something he hadn't felt in a long time. Peace. Not because his problems were solved, not because his daughter was awake yet, but because he had been reminded of something essential, something he had forgotten in his rush to build empires and accumulate wealth. The most valuable things in life couldn't be bought or sold. They could only be given freely, like cookies shared with strangers on cold October evenings. Like prayers whispered for people you barely knew. Like hope offered to those who had lost their way. James walked back into the hospital with lighter steps. He took the elevator up to the 6th floor, walked down the familiar corridor, and entered room 624. And there in the bed where his daughter had lain motionless for 10 days, he saw something that made his heart stop. Lily's eyes were fluttering, just slightly, just barely, but they were moving. Lily! James rushed to her side. Baby girl, can you hear me? Her hand twitched in his. Her eyes continued to flutter, fighting against the heaviness of sleep. That's it, sweetheart, come back to us, you can do it. And as James stood there, holding his daughter's hand and watching her slowly fight her way back to consciousness, he thought about a little girl sitting on a bench outside, a girl who believed in miracles. And for the first time in his life, James believed in them too. Lily opened her eyes fully 3 days after James saw them flutter. 3 days of gradual awakening, of confused moments and difficult adjustments, of her body remembering how to do things it had forgotten. But she opened them. She looked at her father and whispered his name in a voice scratchy from the breathing tube. James had cried like a baby when he heard that word. Dad. Just that one word, but it meant everything. Now, 2 weeks later, Lily sat propped up in her hospital bed, still weak but getting stronger every day. The breathing tube was gone. Most of the wires and monitors had been removed. She looked more like herself again, though thinner and pale, with a healing scar above her left eyebrow that the doctor said would fade with time. "Tell me again about the girl with the cookie," Lily said, her voice still soft but clearer than it had been yesterday. James smiled. He had told her the story at least a dozen times already, but she never seemed to tire of hearing it. "Her name is Sophie. She's 7 years old, and she sits on a bench outside this hospital every evening waiting for her mother to finish work. And she just gave you her only cookie, just like that?" "Just like that. Didn't even hesitate." Lily was quiet for a moment, looking at her hands folded in her lap. "I want to meet her, Dad. Is that weird?" "Not weird at all. Actually, I was thinking the same thing. I have her mother's phone number. I could call and see if they'd be willing to visit." "Really? You'd do that?" "Of course. I think you two would get along great." That afternoon, after Lily had eaten her lunch and taken her physical therapy session, in the hallway, James stepped outside the room and dialed the number on Rosa Rodriguez's card. His hand was shaking slightly as he pressed the call button. The phone rang 3 times before someone answered. "Hello?" It was Rosa's voice, cautious and uncertain. "Mrs. Rodriguez? This is James Chen. We met outside the hospital a couple weeks ago." "Yes, Mr. Chen, I remember." There was a pause. "Is everything all right?" "Everything is wonderful, actually. My daughter woke up. She's going to be okay." He heard Rosa's sharp intake of breath. "Oh, thank God. That's such good news." "It is. And Mrs. Rodriguez, Lily keeps asking about Sophie. She'd really like to meet her if that would be okay with you. Maybe Sophie could come visit one day after school." Another pause, longer this time. "Mr. Chen, that's very kind, but I don't want to intrude on your family's time. You're going through something very difficult and, please," James interrupted gently. "It would mean a lot to both of us. To all of us, actually. My wife, Catherine, wants to meet Sophie, too. The whole family does." He could hear Rosa talking to someone in the background. Probably Sophie. Then Sophie's voice came on the line, bright and excited. "Mr. Chen, your daughter woke up, Mama told me." James smiled. "She did, Sophie, and she wants to meet you. Would you like to come visit her in the hospital?" "Yes. Yes. Can I come today?" "How about tomorrow, after you finish school?" "Okay. I'll bring her a drawing. I'm really good at drawing butterflies. I'm sure she'll love that." The next day felt impossibly long. Lily was nervous, constantly asking James what time it was and whether Sophie was coming for sure. Catherine had come to the hospital with their other 2 children, Michael and Grace, who were thrilled to see their sister sitting up and talking. "Sophie's coming to visit," Lily told them. "The girl who gave Dad the cookie." Michael, who was 10 and thought he was too old to be impressed by anything, said, "That was pretty cool what she did, giving away her only snack to a stranger." Grace, 8 years old with pigtails and a missing front tooth, asked, "Is she nice? Can I meet her too?" "Everyone can meet her," James said. "But remember, Sophie is younger than you, Grace, and she's probably going to be a little nervous about being in a hospital. So let's all be welcoming and kind, okay?" At 4:30 in the afternoon, there was a soft knock on the door. James opened it to find Rosa and Sophie standing in the hallway. Sophie wore a dress that was clearly her best dress, though it was faded from many washings. Her hair was pulled back with a clip, and she carried a rolled-up piece of paper in her hand. "Come in," James said warmly. "Come in, please." Sophie walked in slowly, her eyes wide as she took in all the machines and the hospital equipment. Then she saw Lily, and her face broke into a smile. "Hi?" Sophie said shyly. "Hi," Lily replied, just as shy. "You're Sophie. And you're Lily. I've been praying for you every night." Lily's eyes filled with tears. "Thank you. I think your prayers worked." Sophie walked closer to the bed. "I brought you something. I drew this at school today." She unrolled the paper, revealing a colorful drawing of butterflies flying around flowers. "I know you probably like different things than me because you're older, but I really like butterflies, and I thought maybe you might like them too." Lily took the drawing with trembling hands. "I love butterflies. This is beautiful, Sophie. Thank you." Catherine stepped forward, extending her hand to Rosa. Mrs. Rodriguez, I'm Catherine Chen. Thank you so much for coming. Rosa shook her hand, still looking slightly uncomfortable. Thank you for inviting us. Your family has been through so much.